Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. I normally don't say the day that it is, but this particular happens to be a week when there was Wednesday in the middle of it. And Wednesday night at our church, we have a meeting on Wednesday night. And this past Wednesday, the pastor worked and strived and did his best to bring a message that would be appropriate for us as growing Christians. What is a growing Christian? This is first somebody who has said, Jesus, I am a sinner. Forgive me of my sin. Come in my heart and save my soul. Now you are a growing Christian. First days of a growing Christian, you're like a little chicken. Just came out of the egg. And you kind of flop around just a little bit. And you're beginning to get going. But as time goes on, you grow. They grow chickens today in 8 weeks and they're ready to eat. Full-grown chicken. Well, I got news for you. As a Christian, you're not going to grow a whole long ways in 8 weeks in the Bible, in the sense of the word. But you are going to grow a lot away from the world in those first 8 weeks. First 8 weeks, I was saved. The alcohol had gone. The cussing had gone. The raveling had gone. The playing polka had gone. The running with the crowd that I ran with had gone. I had started going to a church that was very active. I would very much promote that for you if you would go find the church in your town that is like the least. Find the one that's talked about the most and go to it. If it's talked about the most, it'll have a bus ministry. They'll be in church 7 days a week. You can never go by the church building, somebody's not there. They may have a radio station, they may not, but they'll have something going on. There'll be something going on 24/7 year round. And that's how it is at the little old church that I go to now. And always something going on. Anyway, in the week past, on a Wednesday, our pastor brought to us out of the book of James some things. Did you know that James is a testing of faith? The first, chapter 1, for the first 12 verses, talks about testing our faith. And if you got faith as a grain of a mustard seed, the Bible said, you can move mountains. And what can hurt faith of a man who has been saved for quite a while and he hasn't adhered to what the book of James said? The book of James is talking to the just. Who are the just? That's those who are saved. Let's read the first couple verses here. We have a purpose in testing. We're going to be tested in this world after we're saved. He said, James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. This is what he says, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. You would think that the book of James was written to just the Jew. But that's not so. It is written to those 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. That's the bondsman, that's the free man. Bondsman, I mean by the man that's a poor man. He's a servant or a slave to another man, or he's incarcerated. He's in prison, and he's a bondsman. He's in. I'll tell you another thing too. I know today people who are saved, who really are truly born again, who truly are Christians, that are bound up by the world. They have got themselves in such a mess financially. I just heard a statistic the other day. Said the average American family, listen to this, will you please? Listen to this. The average American family have maxed out a credit card and found out they could get another one somewhere else. And they've maxed it out and continued the process. Now they're playing swap around and they're paying one card with another, and they fooled around here and they've got themselves $25,000 in debt. Anywhere between $15,000 and $25,000 in debt, people that play with credit cards. Now you've got yourself a $550, $600, $700 a month at minimum credit card bill. Can you keep up with it? More than likely not. You got one card guy screaming at you, and when he does, you either find another place to get another card, or you take 2 or 3 of your other cards and you go to the bank and you get what's called a cash draw. And you draw cash here and there and you put it together and you put it on this other credit card. Now you're on a merry-go-round that you can't get off from. It's going too fast. If you was to jump off, you break your leg. And you've got a real serious problem. I do have a recommendation for you, and that's to find the proper counselor and start retiring those cards and cutting them up one at a time. Well, let's get back in the book. Back in the book is you can't follow Jesus, is what I was going to say. Under bondage. I was talking about under bondage. That's a bondage today on an average American person. My second thing, he said, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations. Now what he's saying here is, here you are in a temptation and you work through it rather than fall into it. So don't fall into that temptation, and ask God to deliver you from it, and by doing that, you have got a victory. You don't need a whole lot of victories in a day to be able to have a good day. I love to get up with a victory. I'm sitting here with a victory. My brother Larry challenged me yesterday. He said, what are you doing with your excerpts, Brother Peter? I said, Brother Larry, through this situation I've had with my computer in the last month, that I've done many of these and lost them, and my machine's been going crazy, and I've had all kinds of problems, and Lord willing, we have victory. We've got victory today over the thing. And so verse 3, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. The trying of your faith worketh patience. We saw salvation. That was the first thing we got in. After salvation, asking Jesus to forgive us our sin, come out and save our soul, we found the church that God would have us be in, and we asked that pastor to baptize us. Now we're a brand new wet Christian. And that baptism does not make you a full-grown Christian. It's getting you started. You're just getting in. Now you've got to dry off and start marching. And you've got to walk to the drum beat of the Bible. If you are thinking of going to a church and the man does not use the King James Version of the Bible, do not go to that church. You find a church that uses the King James Version Bible. It's not going to be hard to find one in your town or in your locale. I drive about 23 miles roughly to a church. People say, Well, Pete, you pass 7, 8 churches, 9 churches while you're going to your church, the one you go to. Yes, because I go to one that preaches out of the King James Version only. I go to one that believes that God is God and He's the only God in heaven, and we don't have any other gods before us. And I believe what this book says. Verse 4, but let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Wow. That is verse 4 of the first book of James. Now, I preached last night. What did he preach last night? He preached, you want to have a successful Christian life? Yeah, I do. I'd love to have a successful Christian life. Well, I got saved, and I got baptized. And I found the church that God wants me in. Now I have to do something. I take out this is a tithing envelope. What does this say? This says that 10% of every dollar that I make belongs directly to God. It's His money. You say, what do you mean, Peter? I worked for it. How can it be God's money? I got news for you. Every single penny you got's God's money. I tell you what you do. Don't tithe and see if you don't get cut off. Don't tithe and see if you can understand this book, this Bible in front of you. Don't tithe and see if you can understand it. You're going to come up against that wall called tithing constantly if you don't tithe. But if you tithe, what you're going to come up against is that wall tithing, and you're going to find out it says, this is why you can understand what this says, because you are tithing. If you're tithing, you can understand anything in this book. You say, well, how come people say to me all the time, Brother Pete, how do you get that out of that verse? How did you get that out of that book? Well, I tithe. I give 10%. The day that I got saved, my wife and I my wife is the one that takes out the money. I don't care how much I make. I don't care how much debt we're in. I don't care how much trouble there is. I don't care what's what. I would rather let my rent be behind than let my tithing be behind. If you tithe and you didn't pay your rent, your landlord will understand that you didn't have enough money to pay your rent. But God will also understand that, and He'll give you double your rent money next month, and you can start getting ahead on your rent rather than behind. And by the way, why don't you try that? Why don't you try that? Why don't you try readjusting and paying your rent a week ahead of time? Having your rent check in 1 week ahead of time. Continually. You got a car payment? Have it a week ahead of time. Start rescheduling these things one at a time. And God will bless you. Pretty soon you'll be able to get 1 month ahead. Wouldn't it be nice to wake up in the morning and be a month ahead on every payment you got? You say, how do you do that, Brother Peter? You start rescheduling. You ladies and men that drive by Starbucks every morning and spend $6 to $8 at Starbucks. $6 to $8. Rework that system. Get up in the morning. Drink a bottle of water. Most healthy thing you can possibly do. Drink a bottle of water. And cut Starbucks out and put that $8. You say, well, I get that on my credit card. Get it on cash. Put it in an envelope. Do that. 7 days of Starbucks, $56. $56. Figure it out. That in 2 weeks, that's $112 That is $224 of your money in 1 month you spend at Starbucks. I see it. I watch it happen. I watch it. I see it. I know it happened. Man, that's a payment. That's a payment. You could do in 1 week. You could advance that 1 week on a payment to one of your payments that you have, and you'd be a week ahead. When you get a month ahead on all your payments, then you're on easy street. Well, your payments are running over you now? Yes, they probably are. Well, if they are, get them ahead. How do you do it? Cut the friv out. Cut the frivolous things out. Cut them out. All right. What is faith? Faith and patience, what is all that stuff? It's learning how to follow God. Verse 5, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. God will give you liberally a pleasant and absolutely pleasant life. You can have a pleasant life. You don't have to be burdened down with everything. If you'll start adhering to what God said to do and do it first. Get your tithes in first. Then your faith will increase. Why can't you hear the Word of God? By the way, why weren't you in your church Wednesday night? Why were you not in your church Wednesday night? There's a reason for it. If you were working, you have a schedule and you're a working man, you have a schedule and you had to be at work, okay. I'm suspecting that your church, like my church, is modernized enough today that the pastor has recorded the Wednesday night service, and if you go on the net at your church, you can punch up Wednesday night service and you can see what you missed. And you can see that our pastor, in spite of the fact he was talking in the book of James, started with a very thing called tithing. He said, if you find yourself outside of the blessing of God, or you feel like you're outside the blessing of God, it's more than likely because you're not tithing. Did you know that God designed the 10%? If you are a church of 5 members, and you're 5 members and you all tithe, you'll have enough money to run the church that you're in. If you have 50 members and you all tithe, you'll have the amount of money you need to run that church. If you have 300 members and you all tithe, you'll have enough money to run that church and have some excess. How does that work, Brother Peter? Well, first place is the pastor has to be a man that doesn't throw the church money away, or give the church money away, or take too much salary, but earns his way. Earns his way. I've been a long time believer. That if a man takes a church and he has people in the church that are already there when he takes the church, that's one thing. If he grows the church, then maybe his salary could grow. But if he doesn't grow the church, has he earned the right for his salary to grow? This is the thing. He's got to be a stewardess man. The Bible said a good steward. Let's get back in the book. Verse 6. But let him that ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven by the wind and tossed. Are you going to make a prayer today? Are you going to pray for something today? Are you going to think about it in your heart? Are you going to mull it around and say, Lord, between you and I'm including you in my thoughts today, is this something that I really need to ask for And if I do, I would love you to grant it. If there's something really that I need, I'd love you to grant it. There are some things that you ask that you have to put legs and feet on. There are some things that you ask that you have to work. I'm working on a little project at my house for my Sunday school boys. And that I could have them up here on a Saturday and we do a little project out back. Well, 13 years ago I bought a piece of property. So I'm 91. I bought a piece of property. It was worthless. It had a bank that went straight down to the street. So I had to build a wall, dug a basement under the house, put the dirt down there on the bank. So it's been there about 13 years. Now I'm reworking the bank. I built a new wall, a new fence, and I'm reworking the bank. And I'm going to use this little old bitty, less than 1 acre, and I'm going to put a barrel garden in, half barrels screwed to the fence. We're going to fill them with dirt and fertilizer. I'm going this very day and get cow manure. Get a trailer load of cow manure. And going to put it in the dirt, in the barrels. And we're going to grow, each one of my Sunday school boys are going to grow a plant. Maybe somebody will grow a tomato, somebody will grow an egg plant, somebody will grow a cucumber, and somebody will grow this and that, and bell peppers and hot peppers and all different kinds of things. Why are you going to do that, Brother Peter? It's a growing process. What is it growing? You know something? We are going to see fruit for our labor. We're going to see fruit for our labor. And not only that, we're going to see spiritual fruit for our labor. Because our day's not going to be just down there planting and checking around and everything. We're going to do a lot of things. We're building a little platform down there. We're going to have our grill on and stuff. And, our boys love hot dogs. Boys love hamburgers. And boys love to do things. And we're going to have a little fire pit. For maybe we get to end up on a Friday night coming up, sitting around down there and have the fire pit burning. And just enjoying stuff. And my boys know if they're around Brother Peter, they're going to do some Bible study. We're going to learn some things. We're going to do some things. I got vision for my boys. My vision for my boys, we're going to do some writing. We're going to write some quizzes, some small quizzes out of the Bible. We are going to entertain ourselves with God's Word. Now here you are, a grown person. You got saved. You got in the church. You've actually started tithing. Well, now that you've done that, your faith will work. Whatever faith you want to apply to your life will work. The faith of a grain of mustard seed will work. So your faith is going to be testing by your action. If your action is following God properly. Verse 7, for let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. This is a man that's tossed like the wave now, but let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. Now let not that man think that he'll receive anything from the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Are you torn between church at church time and doing some pleasurable thing you like to do? I know many people like to go to a football game on Sunday. I would be scared to death. I have enough fear of the Lord. I would not go sit in a stadium and miss church if somebody paid me $1,000 cash money. Said, Peter, I'll give you $1,000 if you'll go to this football game today instead of church. I'd say, you crazy, mister. If I went and sat in that stadium and they started doing the wave or rocking or something, that stadium would fall down and thousands of people would get killed. maimed. Or one of those terrorists is going to come along and bomb one of them things one of these Sundays. If you're not in church and you're there, you can't complain. Well, God allowed me to get blown up. No, God didn't allow you to get blown up. He didn't tell you to go there in the first place. You belong in the church building on a Sunday. You don't belong in a football stadium. All right, you just got done saying you were a Christian. You just got done saying that you're not tossed like a wave. And if you are tossed like a wave, he said, don't think you're going to receive anything from me. If you're tossed like a wave, you got a hard life ahead of you. You say, well, Brother Peter, I really can't afford to tithe. And you know why? Because you're tossed like a wave. If you're tossed like a wave, you know you can't afford to tithe. You better get straightened out. You better turn things around. You better quit drinking that Starbucks coffee and put your money in the tithing envelope. That's the first thing. Second thing is to not be double-minded. Verse 8, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Verse 9, let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted, but the rich in that he is made low, because as a flower of the grass he shall pass away. For the sun is no sooner risen than the grass, is no sooner risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower therefore falleth, and the grace of the fashion of it perisheth. So also shall the rich man fade away in his ways. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tempted, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Man, you are going to get the crown of life which God has promised you. Do you know, I've always taken that, and still do, as that's something that fadeth not away. This is something that we're going to get in heaven. But I'm going to tell you a little story. I've asked God, and I'm 74. I'm 4 years past my window of life. And I've asked God for another 10 years to work some things at the church. I want to see some prosperity of gospel, and I want to see some prosperity in our youth. I do not want to see one child that right now that is engaged in our first grade work to fall by the wayside. Not a one that's in the second grade, one that's in the third, the fourth, the fifth. My realm is fifth grade boys. Sometimes, like this week, I had the fourth grade boys incorporated. Many fourth grade boys today have fifth grade size, but they're only in the fourth grade. Some of our fourth grade boys have sixth grade intelligence spiritually. I want to see that grow. I want to see 10 years from now, when my 10-year-old boys are 20, I want to see them the leaders of the fifth grade. I want to see them the leaders of the fourth grade. I want to see them the leaders of the sixth, seventh grade. I want to see them the leaders. I don't want to see not one, fall by the wayside. Not one of them. I want to see every one of them, when they're 20, still be in the church, still be working, still be stable, still know the answers to questions, still know how to get a hold of God, still know when something happens, why it happened. And even now, I teach tithing to my boys. If you get a Christmas gift, they're not working, most of them. Some of them get a little bit, some of them get allowance. 10 pennies of that belongs to God. I don't care if you got a $1 bill. A $1 bill, 10 cents belongs to God. You live on the 90%. I've heard of a man in this world that's has a great, huge business. If I said the name, y'all would know it instantly. I don't know all the facts, so I'm not going to say his name. I understand he lives on 10% of his business and 90% goes to God. Wow. I would like to be in that. I am in that. I shouldn't say I would like to be. Excuse me. I am in that. I am in that realm. I am in that realm. I claim nothing. I claim nothing in this world. Not one thing do I claim in this world. And everything I have belongs to God. He lets me use it. And I try to take care of it because He lets me use it. And I try to keep all the bills current. My wife and I, as I speak right now, are debt-free. When I say debt-free, I mean debt-free. I'm absolutely and 100% debt-free. My wife said this. She said, "You really can't say that, Peter, because I bought a pair of pants last month, and the only way I could get the discount on them was to put them on the card, so I did. So I owe for a pair of pants." Well, so I say we're debt free except for one pair of pants. So that's where we are today. And what we have belongs to God. And I can use it for that. I can use it for that because it is. Now we got through the first 12 verses of chapter 1, called The Testing of Our Faith in James. Our preacher did this the other night. James, the word means the just. This is the book about the just. This is a book that gives us about the pillars of the church. In the book of James, after you go through the book of James, you will come out being one of the pillars of the church if you obey. It is a larger revelation than what we've seen up to James. Up to the book of James, you've had some revelations. You know, in James there were some books that hadn't been written yet. Romans hadn't been written yet. And so, because it hadn't been written yet, let's see where my notes are. Romans and Galatians hadn't been written yet. Now, so this right here, for those folks that are in that day, this is a great revelation to them. This is a distinctive doctrines. This is a book of distinctive doctrines. The doctrine of salvation, first asking Jesus. The doctrine of baptism in order to test your faith. Are you willing to get baptized to say that I'm going to prove what I asked the Lord to save me, and I'm going to get baptized and test my faith? That God will bless me? And the reality of that testing of my faith will start showing up in my tongue? What do you mean, Brother Peter, start showing up in your tongue? You won't say the things you used to. You won't lie like you used to. You won't do what you used to do. You'll start learning how to speak words of God out of the Bible. And your tongue will change. You will start coming out of the wilderness. As you start coming out of the wilderness, you will be warned about the riches of the world, and that tells you to take the place of the riches of the world with the riches of the book. I haven't gone good enough here. I've got to get through. I need to get through these. The last thing in this book is going to be about the history. But okay, we're entering into the second part. Solicitation to do evil is not of God. Anytime you are solicited by anybody, anywhere, or anything in your own mind to do evil, it's not of God. So you'd like to have everything be good in your life? Well, then don't listen to the solicitation of the devil. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. So any temptation you have that is outside of the Word of God is not from God. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Wow. You drew $500. $50 belongs to the church. You start to write 50, and you're tempted to say, well, I need that other 20. Man, I really can't afford but 30. You just cut your throat. You just cut one of your wrists. If you're willing to go down to 30, you'll be willing to go down to 20. Now you got both wrists bleeding. You need to get to the doctor, and the doctor's name is Jesus. And you need to say, forgive me, Jesus. Forgive me, Lord God. Forgive me. Help me to get this thing straightened out. Write a proper tithing envelope this week. The church you go to. Write a proper tithing envelope this week. Get yourself on the right road. You say, well, I'm going to have to make some adjustments. Well, start at Starbucks. Start with that Snickers bar. Look at what you do frivolously. Do you pump $25 worth of gas in a boat engine and go fishing? Do you go and buy a box of shells and go hunting? Are you spending God's money for the things of this world? If you're not tithing properly and you do anything during the week that is above and beyond everyday living, just staying above the water, if you do that, the reason you're just staying above the water is because you're not tithing. So you start tithing and you're going to find yourself walking on the water. God said so. He said you can walk on the water of this world if you will tithe. So let's get back to the tithing, the proper thing, the first thing. The only reason you can't follow the book of James, there's only one reason. If you can't find yourself in the book of James, following God in the book of James, the only reason is you ain't tithing. Because if you're tithing, you're doing the obedient things. I can tell you another thing. When the doors of the church are open, you need to be there. If you got any spiritual age on you since you've been saved and you're not in Sunday school, you're not right with God. If your church has a Sunday school and it's providing it for you, there's a teacher that worked this week and he learned a lesson and he prayed and he studied and he said, God, give me what my people need, and you're not there, then you're a problem. And you've got a problem. And you will have a problem, and you'll be a problem to yourself when you look in the mirror. And you'll be a problem to yourself when you get your paycheck. You're going to be a problem to yourself. Why? Excuse me. Because because you're not tithing. You say, Brother Peter, you are sure hammering that in this morning, today. Yeah, I'm hammering it in. Because you can't have two things at one time. You can't have the faith that you need to live by and be disobedient. Let's read verse 14. When every man is tempted, he's drawn away of his own lust and enticed. 15. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin. Wow. And sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. There you are, verse 15. Verse 16. Do not err, my brother, beloved brethren. Verse 17. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. Of his own will begat he us with the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear. Wow. Slow to speak and slow to wrath. Boy, I'm telling you, this is working on us real good today. And slow to wrath. All right. Now, verse 20. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. Wherefore lay apart all filthiness. Man, are you a joker? Lay it aside. Are you a slanderer? Lay it aside. Are you a gossiper? Lay it aside. What are you doing that's between you and God that's a splinter? And superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your soul. You got a word from God, from somebody that saved your soul. Now, he should put away all these things. If you're in the workplace, and today millions of people are in the workplace, the only person I could really use for a good example would be myself. I was a wicked man. I treated women with somewhat of a disdain when I was a young man. It just so happened I was a head man, had 100 people working for me when I was 18 years old. 19 years old, 18, 19 years old. Had a job supervising a fish factory. I looked upon those women as objects, like the Bible people used to back in Bible days. Kings looked at the women as objects, and men of royalty looked at women as objects. And Solomon looked so much at them as objects that he captured 900 or so of them. And that's an evil thing. Here was a man, one of the wisest men in the world, with a evil trait. Had an evil trait. And that evil trait, at the end of it, got him in a lot of trouble. You cannot have that trait today and get away with it and be God's person. You can't do it. And so God had to take me, my mind, and my life away from such. And he has. And now I look at a lady, if she's another man's wife, she's another man's wife. If I see good in that lady, I need to say this: wow, I'm happy for that man. He's got him a good woman. Not that I would like to be partaker of the goodness of that woman. That's the opposite. That's the filthy lucre. That's the filthy, not lucre, but the superfluity. That is the superfluity of thinking. Keep your mind where your mind belongs. Keep your mind where your mind belongs. I don't care if you've got a woman that's absolutely not pretty. If she's your woman, she takes care of you, you got the best thing you need. Would I, and do I have a woman. To me, she's beautiful. The other, she might not be. But it wouldn't matter to me if she had a wart on the end of her nose and 3 on her chin. She's my woman. And God put us together. And we're going to be happy in life because we're going to treat each other properly. And that's the way you're going to be happy with God. Let's look at a test of obedience here. Test of obedience, 22 through 25. But be ye doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any man be a hearer of the word, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself, and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he is. Man, that is a terrible, dangerous thing to do. But whosoever looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed indeed. Did you hear that word? Work. Work. Did you hear that? Work. Wow. We've been getting ready for the Easter play. And during the Easter play, getting ready at our church, we do a big Easter play. And while we've been getting ready for this Easter play, almost any given day in the last 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, you could go down there. You could count on seeing 4 to 5 men there every time you walked in the door. Every day. I'm talking about work days. Well, do these men work? Some of them do. They work night, but they're down there at that church during the day. Some of them have laid their jobs aside for 4 or 5 weeks. I got news for you. Every single one of those men that have been down there and done what they've been doing and doing what they've been doing are under the blessing of God. Under the blessing of God. Do you have some down there working, Brother Peter, that don't have any work and can't work because they're disabled or whatever? Yeah, we got some. We got a man drags his foot around. I guarantee you when there's work going on, you know where he is? Right in the middle of it. Dragging his foot. It says to me every now and then, hey, you mind get a jar of peanut butter or 2 or whatever? And I said, no, come on. And so, listen, God is going to bless the doer. He's going to bless the doer. The test of true religion, 26 through 27. If any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. I don't know who you are, but if you're watching this, I tell you what you do. You get in the mirror. Slump down, get in the mirror, because that's what you look like to God. Slump down, look like what you look to God. All draggedy face, draggedy. This is what you look like to God. Snap up and draw yourself to attention. Pull your shoulders back. Sit up straight. Stand up straight. Look right in the mirror and say, God, I need you to forgive me because I've been this man. I've been slothful. I've been cheated you and robbed you in tithes and offerings. Oh, by the way, oh, Brother Peter, you've been talking about tithes. That's 10%. What is offerings? That's another 5%. That's 15%. I can't live on what I'm making now. All I can tell you is quit smoking. Quit smoking up God's money. I'll guarantee you this, and this is a fact, and I know it is. If you smoke, and you smoke like I did before I got saved, if you smoke like I did, you smoke more than 10% of your money up. Back when I smoked more than 10% of what I made up every week. Guaranteed. Verse 27. Pure religion, undefiled before God and the Father, is this: to visit the fatherless, the widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. You just got a commission. What is your commission? Your commission is to do for others more than yourself. Pure religion, undefiled. is that you visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. That's visit the widows and mind your own business when it comes to permissive things. Because you help a widow doesn't give you the right to enter into her world any more than you did before you helped her. Today we have more fatherless children than any country in the world. Because men have left their first estate. They've left their wives. They've left what they're supposed to. They've left their responsibilities. In chapter 2, we have a testing of brotherly love. And that is well. And in chapter 3, we have a true faith will control the tongue. In chapter 4, we have the rebuke in the wilderness. Chapter 5, we have the rich warned and exhorted, an exhortation in the view of coming of the Lord. And I'm not going to get to those today. You're going to have to get the book out yourself. Find out what the last of the book of James is. If you've got a King James Bible, and it's let's say it's a Scofield, a good one, it's going to have some things in it that give you some narrations. This particular one here is a Scofield reference edition. I would recommend you get this. And when you get it, it's going to have what I've been saying to you this morning. It's going to have breakdowns of those narrations in there. Our time's getting close to gone, so I'm gonna breeze this book. There are 5 things in this little book. I don't have the statistics in front of me right here of how many chapters and words that there is in this book, and but there are 5 chapters in James, and those 5 chapters have 5 tests of faith. And the testing of faith, chapter 1 through 26, we talked about that today. Faith is something that grows by action. If you have no action, you have no faith. If you have faith as a grain of a mustard seed, that's just a little drop of faith. You can move mountains. The second thing is, of the 5 tests of faith, is the reality of faith tested by the tongue. You can test your faith, see where your faith is, by how you talk, by what you do. What does your tongue do during the day? Does God have to continually condemn you about your tongue? Do you lay down in bed at night and know that your tongue has not betrayed you today? And know that you haven't done anything that you have to regret? Do you lay in bed until 10, 11, go to bed at 9, lay there until 10 or 11, regretting the day? Do you need to get up and call somebody and say, hey, I want to apologize. I slandered you today. Wow. I tell you what you do. You do that a couple times. You call somebody and tell, or go see them face to face and say, I said something about you that wasn't true. Will you forgive me? Oh, wow. You do that a couple times. I've had to do it. It'll curb you from speaking out of turn. It's going to, when somebody else says something about somebody, you better say to them, listen, wait a minute, hold it. My ears ain't no trash cans. I don't want to hear no innuendo about that man. None. They say, well, I thought he was your enemy. I say, he's not my enemy. I might not particularly like him, but I don't want to hear no trash about him either. Even if you don't particularly like a man, you don't want to hear. Do not receive trash about anybody. You tell that person fixed to give you some innuendo, and say, hey, don't give that to me. I don't want it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Well, did you hear me? I said I don't want to hear it. People that do that stuff, they'll press you to the end of the world to try to tell you something that's none of their business, Even if it's true, they got no business talking about it. And what you need to say to them, look, why don't you go to this person, help them out. They got a problem in this area, go help them out. Don't tell me about them. Go tell them what you think would help them. Wow. Let's get this junk out of our Christian life, out of our church. Let's get it out of our minds. Let's get it out of our ears. Let's get it out of our hearing. Tattletales. Man, let's look at the second thing. The reality of faith tested by the tongue. That's what I just said. I can tell you those who's got faith and who haven't by their tongue. I can tell you who's got faith. I sit in the balcony at my church. We got a group of men that stay in the vestibule. We got a group of women that haven't learned yet that there's a nursery. My wife's gave herself to the nursery over 38 years. She's been in the nursery some 30-something years and worked it hard and works it every week. Spends anywhere between 1 and 4 hours a week figuring up nursery lists, getting ladies lined up that call in with some idea that they don't need to be in this week. They volunteered, but they're not going to be out there this week, and for some one reason or another. So therefore, she has to find another set of women and get it all lined up. But then we have those that care not for the nursery, think that the nursery is not where their baby belongs, and therefore they interfere with the church service, they interfere with everything, and then they come out in the vestibule not knowing that upstairs in the balcony we can hear everything that goes on in the vestibule. Sometimes the vestibule is louder than the preaching. If you should happen to be in the church I go to, take it to heart and quit doing that. The third test of faith, the rebuke of the wilderness. Remember that was in chapter 4, 1 through 17. If you're living in the wilderness, you're going to be rebuked. What is the wilderness? That's not attending the services that you need to attend Sunday night, Sunday morning, Wednesday night. If there's a special meeting and you need to be there and you're part of it, if you signed up to be in part of the church that you're supposed to be in, and they're having a meeting, and other than for work or something, you're not there, you just laid out, then you're not doing right. You need to get on the ball. All right, the fourth thing is the rich are warned. Not because they're rich. They're warned because they put their trust in their riches rather than God. If the rich man, just like the poor man, did only what God asked, tithe on his income, 10%, and that's all, and did help where he could, do what he can do, that's all he's required. And then we have the exhortations of this book called the hortatory. This is the hortatory of the book, which is the exhortations in view of the coming of the Lord. The reason James wrote what he did is so that you and I, as young Christians or middle-aged Christians or old Christians, this book fits every one of us, that we can be exhorted to an exhortation to do right, to do right. Do right if the stars fall out of heaven. It is our duty to do right. So let's get on the ball and do right. Okay? Okay. We agree that this is a necessary thing. All right, I got to hurry now. Concerning teaching, concerning distinctive doctrine, the doctrine of grace, the doctrine of being a convert, the doctrine of counseling, the doctrine that the law had been fulfilled, that James is elementary. It's not really extreme. It's elementary. It's something we need to take these little 5 chapters that will take us about 20 minutes to read at the most, and we need to put them to work. And that's elementary. It's the rudiments of faith. Now the word, it was problematic because Galatians and Romans hadn't been written yet. The people were kind of afraid of Paul because they didn't understand justification yet. They didn't understand that they were 100% justified by God, just as if they had never sinned. They hadn't got to that place yet. And it kind of was a little bit of a works deal to get where they were instead of justification. Even though by your works, God, the people will know you instead of justification. So they kind of, they thought justification was a little bit absurd. And so they kind of were working a little bit on the fleshly side to have their own justification by their works. So that's the reason why in James we see a little drawback right there. So we'll see you next time. Bye bye. This is Brother Peter with tidbits from